Right.
Thank you. So the topic that I have chosen to present is on Purusha Mrugam, a very popular theme in Shaivite temples of South India, especially Tamil Nadu and parts of Andhra Pradesh, and in southern Karnataka, and in few places in Kerala. Not sure if Purusha Mrugam as a concept is seen as popular as he is in South India, in other Shiva temples of North India. So my presentation, apart from the representation, the artistic representation, will also cover references to this character in the scriptures, followed by the itihasas, and how they are revered in the Shaiva Agamas, the iconographic representation as suggested by the Shaiva Agamas, and how they are seen in temples today. So that's how I structured it. So all my slides will have one image of a Purusha Mrugam representation chosen from different temples from different periods. So as I cover the subject, I'll also be pointing out to the that particular sculpture in that slide to show the difference of wide range of artistic representation of the Purusha Mrugam. So Shiva Bhakti, a very Shaivism as such, an integral component of Indian culture, probably the most popular religious denomination in India, with temples ranging from all probable cities to towns and villages, and very simple altars to massive temple complexes. Shiva as a prominent god being worshipped in different forms across India. As old as Indian culture, we can say the worship of Shiva has been. And so worshipping Shiva and through prescribed means or a chosen means, and expressing your devotion has been a prominent feature in Indian history. Talking about devotion, Shaivite tradition gives a lot of importance to a structured mode of worship, a ritualistic mode of worship, be it any branch of Shaiva school, be it the Shaiva Siddhantins or the Kashmira Shaivites or the Shaivites who follow traditions like the Kalamukas or the Bhairava school, whatever it is, a structured religious worship system is prescribed, and it is passed on through Guru Sishya Parampara, and generally called as Shiva Puja. It is identified as the best way for a union with the Almighty. Hence, Shiva Puja as a tradition to attain salvation is prescribed, especially in the Agamic school, which is also popularly called as the Shaiva Siddhanta school. And in the Shiva Puja traditions, as we perform the rituals, various different gods and goddesses associated with Shaiva school are invoked in various different directions. The central image, the central point in the altar, will be reserved for Shiva, most probably as a Shivalingam. Accompanying him will be Devi, Ganesha, Muruga, and other gods and goddesses. Apart from these principal deities, there will be several deities prescribed in the Agamas to be invoked, their presence to be invoked in different directions. Some of them are the Avarana deities, or the deities who protect individual directions. Talking about that, the 10 weapons that are associated with Shiva, chief attendants of Shiva like Bringi, Nandikeshwara, Rishabha, Chandikeshwara, they are also invoked in different directions. So assigning directional guarding to chief attendants of Shiva is a common feature that we see in the Shaiva Puja system that is seen there in many schools. And it is these devotees who have attained salvation through their uncomparable devotion towards Shiva. So as you invoke each of them, their unique way of devotion is to be remembered. In that list, we have people like Chandikeshwara, Bringi Maharishi, Nandi, and in that list, we also have devotees like Kannappar and Purusha Mrugam. Quite interestingly, the name as such sounds very similar to calling the half-man, half-lion god as Narasimha, the half-god and half-lion feature of Mahavishnu as Narasimha, the avatara. Very similar to that, Purusha Mrugam, quite literally, it means the man-beast combination or the man-animal combination. And there is this very interesting hybrid development of what can be called as a brilliant artistic balance in such an imagination. We have the Purusha Mrugam, whose face is that of a human being. And in most cases, the human features continues up to the hips. From there, below the hips, it's either the legs and tail and the thighs part of a lion, or in some cases, even a tiger. For people who have visited Shiva temples, or the learned members in the audience might recall another prominent character in the Shaiva Siddhanta school who's seen with similar description for their physical appearance. A Maharishi called as Vyagrapada. Quite literally, that means the one with the legs of a tiger. Now, in this picture of Nataraja that I have shown in the screen, to your left, you can see two devotees of Shiva praying to the Nataraja form. One who has the body of the tail of a snake, and the other, the lower part of their body represented as that of a tiger with a long running tail also. They are the twin rishis, Vyagrapata and Patanjali, both of whom were great devotees of Shiva, who performed a penance in Chidambaram, and it was to answer to their prayers, Shiva appeared there as Nataraja. Right there, we have probably one of the earliest representation of devotees who are shown as hybrids with human body, and part of the upper body is that of with human features, and the lower part has animal, or in one case, the snake's tail. So the Vyagrapada tradition is quite a strong tradition. Several schools of temple rituals trace their origin from Vyagrapada, and there are a few schools from Patanjali tradition also. So they are revered as the Adi Gurus who have established and given us the traditions to be followed. There is one more such great devotee who is revered in the Vedas and Itihasas, who has striking similarity with Vyagrapada, and he is Purusha Mrugam. Quite literally, the man-beast combination or the man-animal combination. They are so similar that in some cases, they are wrongly identified too. Many cases, especially in blogs of people, we see Purusha Mrugam wrongly identified as Vyagrapada, or the other way around too. So they are two very similar characters, but each of them are unique, individual, and different from one another. So we'll get down into the Purusha Mriga concept. What exactly do they signify? In very few places, we have also seen a feminine counterpart for the Purusha Mriga. Like, for example, the image that you're seeing now on the screen is from the temple at Chidambaram. There is this very prominent eastern entrance door. As soon as you cross the entrance gateway, on either sides of the doors, you have these Purusha Mrigas installed, one which is a male representation, another with female features in it. This is the only place, to the best of my knowledge, where we see a feminine counterpart to the Purusha Mriga in popular temples here in South India. So they are identified as a couple, and Western historians or Western Indologists who have shown some interest in the Purusha Mriga study call them as the Sphinx of India, because of the artistic balance achieved being very similar to that of the Sphinx, popular in Egyptian and other Hellenistic schools. We have the same title given to here. In fact, the Purusha Mriga features are so common and the tradition has been deep rooted. It is time that we can probably call the Sphinx of Egypt as the Purusha Mriga of Egypt. That's how they should be represented. So the Purusha Mriga here has a body which is very similar to that of a lion, only the face being that of a human being. But in some cases, you also have a combination where half the body feature is that of a human being and the lower portion alone is that of an animal. So these are the two possible and popular different combinations to represent a Purusha Mriga. Where exactly do we find the first reference to the Purusha Mriga concept? who is this? Who is this character and how do we identify it iconographically? Let's get started with that. The first reference to Purusha Mrugam in the literature compilation comes from the Yajur Veda, where the respective offerings for individual gods and goddesses are listed out. Now, Yajur Veda as such is pretty significant because when Rig Veda speaks mostly on the philosophy and prayers are what you see, Yajur Veda takes it to a different level where individual gods and methods of worshipping them are also prescribed. It is in Yajur Veda, we have Sri Rudram, the earliest set of prayers quite directly addressed towards Shiva. It is in the same Yajur Veda where you have the popular verse which goes as Purusha Mrugam Chandramase. And then the verses continue to say how different deities are to be offered different offerings. So here it is said that to propitiate Chandra, the moon god, offer the services like that of Purusha Mrugam. So Purusha Mrugam is associated with the worship of Chandra, Soma. And till date, as the ritual tradition goes, all those aspects for which we pray to Chandra are in one way or the associated with Purusha Mrugam. The moon and the Purusha Mrugam combination seem to be the oldest available reference in the Vedic scriptures speaking about the Purusha Mrugam. Till date, people pray to the Purusha Mrugam for progeny, for bountiful monsoons and lush and nourished water bodies, and to purify oneself. These are the three major prayers for which Purusha Mrugam is worshipped. In fact, it's a tradition in some of the temples. Couples who don't have kids, long married and people without kids, couples, pray to a Shiva temple and offer what is called as a Purusha Mrugam Deepam, a kind of a special lamp. I'll show you some photos very soon. A lamp that is held in the hands of the priest and waved as a part of the daily rituals, which has the icon of Purusha Mrugam imposed in it. That lamp is offered in a Shiva temple or sponsored in a Shiva temple by couples who pray for progeny. Next, for bountiful monsoons and to retain water, getting good rains, that's one part. Ensuring that they are well maintained and that they are well saved and preserved for future use, that's another part totally. So in dry and arid regions like that of the Pandya countries especially, there are a couple of examples where a statue of Purusha Mrugam, a murti of Purusha Mrugam, is installed on the banks of lakes or on lake fronts or on tops of on the top stone of controlled sluices or canals, and they are worshipped too. It's believed that if it's a very challenging summer and if you don't expect much in the monsoons, and if it's going to be very challenging, they pray to this iconic representation, the murti there, installed there, and perform ablutions and special pujas to ensure that there is some water collected in the tanks. I'll also show you some photos of it. But now you can see in this slide the imagery of a Purusha Mrugam. Mostly starting from the late Vijayanagara period, after 17th century especially, we see Purusha Mrugam represented in almost all Shiva temples. Almost all Shiva temples, might not be prominent in all the temples, but somewhere in one corner. I'll also point out to the places where they are mostly positioned, but the most common place to identify a Purusha Mrugam is seeing them as a bas-relief sculpture on the columns, either of mandapas or a column surface of the Gopuram, or in fact, in the entrance of the Sanctum Sanctorum or the main entrance, the Gopuram entrance. These are the probable places where you can see a bas-relief sculpture of a Purusha Mrugam. A Purusha Mrugam being installed in a temple in a separate shrine or worshipped as a murti is very uncommon. You don't see it. He is mostly represented as an image, a bas-relief sculpture on columns or walls of the Shiva temples. What you see there is again from an 18th century late Nayaka period representation, where you can very clearly see some Mongolian influence in the features. Long pulled eyes and the nose there, the circular face, the style of the beard. So there is some impact of the traders probably in many sculptures that you see from the times of Nayakas, especially in Madurai. And probably to represent anything in a very stylistic fashion, they started choosing this, or when they represented social themes in sculptural panels, like scenes of trade happening or ship travel, they represented most of them to look like Mongolians. So here again, you see very minute features from the Mongolian race picked up in the representation of the Purusha Mrugam. So that's the slide, that's the photograph that you see here. Probably one of the 18th century representation of the Purusha Mrugam. Now, the three prayers that are popular with the Purusha Mrugam is to pray for progeny, water sources, and purity. Now, astrological texts and other texts speaking about the planets and praying to the planets point out that it is Chandra to whom you pray for all these three. For progeny, Chandra has his own impact. Water, saving water sources, and to purify oneself. In fact, as a part of the Shiva Puja, we imagine that we take a dip in the rays of the moon to cleanse or purify yourself. So Purusha Mrugam and Chandra, both of them are put together, and the earliest reference in the Yajur Veda speaks about how praying to Chandra should be like how the Purusha Mrugam prayed to it. The next reference, most popular reference, happens in the Itihasa, Mahabharata, where after the war and everything gets over, before Dharmaputra was to be coronated, the Pandavas perform a grand Rajasuya Yajna, a very popular part of the Mahabharata. The Rajasuya Yajna is being performed as advised by Krishna. So Dharmaputra and the Pancha Pandavas make elaborate arrangements for it, and they settle with the Yajna. It is at that point that Krishna calls Bhima and suggests to him that there might be challenges before you complete the Rajasuya Yajna. Of all the yajnas, Rajasuya is pretty complicated, and ensure that you have people to guard your yajna-shala from all possible directions. Taking this as a clue, Bhima, confused, asks Krishna as to who are the best people to be put in charge to protect the Yagasala, and Krishna's first choice was Purusha Mrugam. He says there is this very great devotee of Shiva. Probably the first reference to Purusha Mrugam being identified as a great devotee of Shiva is that is from the Mahabharata. Krishna advises that go request Purusha Mrugam to come down and protect the Yagasala. Telling that, Bhima asks, where exactly do I find him? Krishna says, well, there are different versions to it. One of the versions very clearly says that Purusha Mrugam might be anywhere where there is a Shiva temple. His most fond activity or his only activity is to worship Shiva. He will be marching around, finding Shiva temples, pause there, perform a Shiva Puja, and then continue his pilgrimage to the next temple. That's what he does. So his only job is to perform Shiva Puja. So I'm not sure where exactly, but try, you might spot him in one of the Shiva temples. So saying, Bhima takes that as a clue, approaches Purusha Mrugam, explains the situation and the suggestion by Krishna. Purusha Mrugam accepts it, but he says, I serve my God, Mahadeva, Parameshwara. I might not be really comfortable doing this, but because you're asking, and Krishna himself being a great Shiva devotee, I don't mind taking this up, but on one condition. I levy a condition here. You will have to now start running, because I don't stop. Yeah, I just keep hopping. I temple hop. You start running, and I'll chase you. I'll follow you. I'll chase you. I will take a break in between to perform Shiva Puja. But if at some point you stop somewhere, block my way without able to run, then I might kill you, and that's the end of it. Yeah, that's the condition, he says. Now, this is basically to test if Bhima could outrace Purusha Mrugam. Worried about this condition, Bhima requests Krishna to jump in to help there, and Krishna gives him an idea. He says, out of my devotion towards Shiva, I have collected 12 Shivalingas. I'll give all of it to you. Carry them as you start the race. Keep running. Whenever you feel like you will want to break for some rest, just pop one Shivalingam from your hand, and leave it to rest on the ground. Yeah, just throw it out. Let it go and rest somewhere. Purusha Mriga, once it sees a Shivalingam, he will also stop there and perform a Shiva Puja. So you can take some rest and then continue before he finishes his Shiva Puja. So saying, the race starts and Bhima starts running. And the 12 Shivalingams were distributed on the way. Purusha Mriga spotted each of them, performed a Shiva Puja and continued. So whenever Purusha Mriga stopped, Bhima could take some breathing time and then continue running. So there is a beautiful circuit of such 12 Shivalingams, about which we'll see soon. So this is how Bhima managed to win the race. But even at the last moment, when Bhima reached the boundary of his country, he just noticed that one leg was within the boundary, one leg was outside. Purusha Mriga caught him and said, well, you have not completely gone into your country, so I'm going to kill you now. Dharmaputra intervened and Purusha Mriga asked him to spell out the justice. Dharmaputra said that one leg is only inside his country, so he is half lost, so he might be half killed. Purusha Mriga accepted the just views of Dharmaputra, appreciated it, and blessed Bhima and left him. And as advised by Krishna, Purusha Mriga guarded the Rajasuya Yajnam. Without his presence there, Rajasuya Yajnam wouldn't have been successful. So he was there guarding the entrance of the Rajasuya Yajnashala. After it got over, he approached Krishna and asked him what next. And Krishna, according to the Puranas of Chidambaram, is said to have advised him to go to Chidambara Kshetram and stay there guarding the east entrance. So this is from the Itihasas. After Vedas, we have it in the Itihasas. Now, moving on to Shaiva Agamas, which speaks out the elaborate ways of identifying a Purusha Mriga or installing him, various different forms in which he can be installed. All these pictures, I've just borrowed it from open sources in the websites. So in the Shiva Agamas, he is described as a very prominent Shiva devotee who is to be taken up as an inspiration for others. So he is put at par with several other devotees. So his devotion is what is the best to remember as you enter a Shiva temple. Taking this as a clue, the planners and the sculptors of later period ensured that a bas-relief motif of Purusha Mriga is represented right at the main entrance gate, the main Gopuram of Shiva temples. Majority of the Shiva temples in Tamil Nadu, you can spot it. He will be a part of the base Kalharam, either at the entrance door frame or the passage as you walk through the Gopuram. In either of these places, you will always see a Purusha Mrugam. And on other side, you will see the imagery of Kannappan, a man whose Shiva devotion personified, whose devotion is also unparalleled and of a different plane. So as Shiva devotees, when you enter the temple, it's the devotion of these great people that you think about as you enter. So at his service is Purusha Mrugam, either guarding the entrance door, or the second popular option is to have an exclusive deepam with the image of Purusha Mriga installed in it. I've just shown two of those handheld deepas, so you can see how the arch shape around the Purusha Mriga image there will have place to fix your wick and light the deepam. As a part of several such designed deepams, exclusively designed deepams, Purusha Mriga deepam is described in the Shaiva Agamas, and it is said that people who pray for progeny can donate one of these deepas to a Shiva temple. So that's the Purusha Mriga deepam. And the most popular representation of Purusha Mriga is to show him as performing Shiva Puja. In many cases, you always see him with two hands, one hand holding a bell and the other hand holding either a dhupam or deepam or a camphor plate waved as a part of the Shiva Puja, the harati that you do as a part of the rituals. So it's a harati plate or a deepa plate in his right hand and a bell in his left hand. So he can be seen as bas-relief sculptures in passageways and Gopuram entrances or in the brass lamps. The third, not so popular representation is to represent him as a Vahana, Purusha Mriga Vahana, as it is called. It is prescribed that the deity be brought out in the annual procession on the fourth day morning, seated on the Purusha Mriga Vahanam. That's a common feature that you see in many old temples of northern districts of Tamil Nadu. in Chennai, Kanchipuram, Thiruvannamalai, and as an extension, Kalahasti in the southern parts of Andhra Pradesh also, we get to see a Purusha Mriga Vahanam. Now, this is a representation of the Purusha Mriga. Here, they have got it extended and also added a pair of wings to him. So the face is that of a rishi with Jatabhara. So any Shiva devotee is to have a Jatabhara, the matted hairlock, and it is tied into layers and held like a crown. That is also supposed to be shaped like that of a Shivalingam. So that is there. And the face is that of looks like a rishi with overflowing beard and mush. And he has Karnapatram, or the designer ear stud with floral motifs. And he's always depicted with Vibhuti and Rudraksha. And in some cases, up to his hips, it's the human features that you see, broad shoulders and very muscular body, in fact. And in this one example that you see from the popular temple of Kapalishwara at Mylapore, he is also represented with a pair of wings. The lower part undoubtedly is that of a lion or a tiger. Both the cases, both these are seen. The claws are very sharp. The legs are, again, the lion's legs, they are very, very muscular and very sturdy, in fact. Quite surprising that it is today, the 12th of March, the 4th day of the annual festivals in many temples in Chennai. And as I am telling this, several important temples in Chennai are celebrating the Purusha Mriga Vahanam right now. Quite a coincidence. Thankful again to the opportunity that we are talking about the Purusha Mrugam when he is being worshipped in the temples right away. So that is how the Purusha Mriga Vahanam is decorated and the deity is brought out on it. A representation from Tirupati, Kapileshwara Swami temple in Tirupati town. There again you can see he is in a side profile. So the human face is there, but instead of a Jatabaram, they have represented more like a crown. I think it's probably a wrong representation, or when reworking, they have made a mistake. Mostly all the scriptures identifies him with a Jatabaram. And the body is that of a lion. Here, if you notice, starting from the neck, they have adopted the body of a lion. The tail is generally very, very characteristic. It actually makes a very characteristic S shape. Whether it is a front profile or a side profile, it always goes for a very characteristic S shape, only to represent that he is actually running fast. Purusha Mrugam never freezes in one place, he always runs. Another very unique representation is to install the icon of a Purusha Mriga on banks of water. That's the close-up image. And as you can see, they have actually made a steel ladder to go up and reach out to the top, because there are regular pujas that are performed. And when I say regular, it is not a daily puja scheme, but special pujas, both when it rains badly, that the tank gets filled up and the lake starts overflowing, pray to him to ensure that there is no mishap, that the lake bunds don't break, or there is no flood happening. And also during peak summers, when the lake dries up, they pray to him for rain. So for both bountiful rain and to ensure that it is just good enough, not to cause any kind of flooding in the village, for both these reasons, they pray to him. And it is actually quite a scene to see the lake filled with water to the brim, and right in the center, in a very characteristic sluice channel built in stone, this representation of Purusha Mriga stands there. And here they have gone in for a different representation because it's freestanding. They cannot afford both the hands left free. So they have managed to represent the left hand like he's kneeling for support, for the sculptural support also. And in one hand, he holds what looks like a mace. Now, this has a separate story. We'll get into that now. But just notice that so far, be it in the Deepa or as stone bas-relief representation or in the Vahanas, he is generally represented holding a bell and a camphor plate or a Deepa in his hand. But here for the first time, He's holding a mace and he is already in motion. That's why the two legs are positioned in different levels. One is, I mean, he's actually marching forward. Yeah, but just to ensure the structural stability of the freestanding sculpture, they've represented the left hand as a structural support and designed it to kneel and support itself. Now, before we get into the other representations, one of the earliest appearance in stone sculptures in Tamil Nadu is from the Govardhanagiri panel of Pallavas in Mahabalipuram, situated amidst representation of Krishna and all the Yadavas around him. The very popular Govardhanagiri panel representation, which has been converted into a cave today, amidst all other animals, is a representation of a Purusha Mrugam. To the best of my knowledge, that's the earliest appearance of what looks like a Purusha Mrugam in South Indian temples. I mean, in Tamil Nadu, caves at least, in art forms, in sculpture form. I don't buy for a fact that this is a representation of a Purusha Mrugam, because none of the religious emblems that have been prescribed for Purusha Mrugam is seen there. This seems to be a representation of a man-beast combination, and probably not a devotee as Purusha Mrugam. But after this, all appearances after this is very clearly depicted as a devotee of Shiva, praying to him and performing a Shiva puja, holding a lamp in one hand and the bell in the other hand. Now, in this slide, the picture to the left is from the Govardhanagiri panel of Mahabalipuram, Pallava period. In one corner, you can see the representation of a man-beast combination, and I personally don't feel this is a representation of the Purusha Mrugam. And the photograph on the right is again from the a bas relief from temple columns from Vijayanagara period, where he is represented as a very stout, well-built character. And there again, you can notice the tail which runs all the way up, again to show that he is in motion. Forms and posture. The two prominent postures are, one, he is in motion and he is praying as he runs. He is performing a Shiva puja. Before one gets over, he'll have to run to the next probable temple to perform a puja. So entering different Shiva temples is like a key event for him. So probably that's the reason that a Purusha Mrugam is represented in the entrance, Gopuram entrance of Shiva temples. The second most popular pose is to represent him frozen, kneeling down and praying probably. These are the two probable representation. However, the first one of him running is the most popular one. Based on this popular episode from Mahabharata of Bhima and Purusha Mrugam running and racing, the traditions have gotten deep roots in the southern districts of Tamil Nadu. In fact, the southmost districts, the southernmost districts, Nagarkovil and Kanyakumari, bordering Kerala, a group of 12 temples have been identified and associated with the traditional story from Mahabharata as to be the 12 shrines where Bhima threw a Shivalingam each. These shrines have been developed around the traditional history of Bhima and the race that Bhima and Purusha Mrugam had. It's become so popular a tradition that covering all these 12 temples on the Mahashivaratri day by actually running from one temple to another has become a very, very popular prayer. And in fact, it has become extremely popular that for the past couple of decades, they declare a local holiday. Everybody participates in it. And starting in the early hours of Shivaratri day, there is a traditional way of starting from the first temple, which is in Tirukuruchi or Tirumalai, and from there they start running. And they'll have to run. You cannot do a slow walk. You cannot casually walk because it's a total distance of 88 kilometers to be covered in one day. So people actually run. It's more like a slow run. I wouldn't say it's like a racing, and it is also jam-packed. So you cannot actually run very fast. You'll have to slowly progress, and people the able ones, run and cover the complete 88-kilometer distance and visit all the 12 temples. One of those successfully established pilgrimage circuit that gets activated on the Shivaratri day. And it has got a traditional method of gathering at a particular time in the first temple, taking a ritual dip in the sacred pond there, and the saffron robes to be worn, and people don't chit chat, or they have their own traditions very similar to what people do during specific pilgrimages. So the traditions are to be followed with strict adherence, and you actually run from one temple to another. And this circuit is what is believed to have been the distance covered by Bhima and Purusha Mrugam according to the Mahabharata tradition. And so people visit there, pray to Shiva, they just stop to worship. It is very similar to what Purusha Mrugam did. They stop or pause to worship and continue their journey. A very, very interesting circuit which has been influenced by Itihasas. And it is believed that this group of 12 temples were popularized during the times of Tirumala Nayaka, the Nayaka king of Madurai. And it is also believed that his mother prayed at the first temple, which is one of the temples here, which is also called as Thirumalai. And she prayed there and requested the deity for progeny. And it is also, I mean, these are more like, word of mouth. There are no historic records to support it, but you get to see characteristic life-size representation of the Bhima Purusha Mrugam ordeal in many temples, especially developed during the Madurai Nayaka periods. All around Tirunelveli, some parts near the borders of Kerala and Tamil Nadu, in temples like Sushindram, and temples around Nagarkovil and Tirunelveli district, Kalakkadu, Ambasamudram, in all these temples, Tirupati Marudur, many of these temples, you see life-size representation of Purusha Mrugam, easily 6 or 7 feet tall, and they represent Purusha Mrugam and Bhima on opposite columns. There, it is probably for the first time that Purusha Mrugam is represented holding on to a mace similar to the mace that Bhima holds. Now you can recall the one at Thiruvadhavur, where he is represented with a mace in hand. So it's a Nayaka period influence of considering the story, extending the story, more like actually a chasing race, where Purusha Mrugam also holds on to a weapon similar to that of Bhima. Now, this is a modern art representation, but in strict adherence to traditions, where it is not just those 12 temples, but Purusha Mrugam could see every stone as a Shivalingam. So as he runs, every stone there, he considers it as the Shivalingam, and he starts worshipping it. Yeah, the Shivalingam is an amorphous representation. You don't need it to be clearly chiseled and to be of some proportions and all that. Shiva's manifestation can happen in any object as a Shivalingam, a Nishkala form, the formless form. So any stone on his way, he considers it as a Shivalingam and starts worshipping it. So as you can see, the ritual vessels are all there. He is actually using a vessel to pour some milk and perform an abhishekam. And you have the camphor, the flowers and fruits to be offered to the deity. Yeah, a typical Shiva Puja setup is what is represented in this painting. And his root has been shown in plan, and every stone on his root is represented as a Shivalingam. So the people who run in what is called as the Shivalaya Ottam, again, consider it as the same feature. Now, some of the classical examples, most of these will be from the Nayaka period. So here you can see the kneeling down example. And so the face alone is that of a human being, and all other features are of the lion. This is also from Nayaka, but the Tanjavur Nayaka school. So here he is running. Whenever you spot a Purusha Mrugam with a mace in his hand running like this, you can always be sure there will be an image of Bhima being chased somewhere close to it. This is from, again, the Nayaka period, Subramanya shrine inside the big temple of Tanjavur. The Mukhamandapa of Muruga's shrine in the Brihadishwara temple at Tanjavur has 2 columns. The front 2 columns exclusively dedicated for Purusha Mrugam and Bhima. So representations of life-size images of 6-7 feet tall images became popular during the Nayaka period. And again, after 17th, 18th century, when you have the later period representation, mostly it is seen in the column as bas-relief sculpture. So here again, a Shivalingam, a Purusha Mrugam, but however big or small, the characteristic tail and the overflowing beard kind of continues. Now, this is a much recent representation, completely influenced by Victorian artistic traditions from the Nagarattar temples in and around Karaikudi. Here you can see how the Purusha Mrugam is represented in a very cute fashion, probably with a very circular and charming face alone, but the remaining part of the body is of the lion. So it's either half human, half lion, or face alone is that of a human being and the remaining is that of a lion. This is from Dharasuram, a classic later Chola representation from Rajaraja II's production. And there you see how Bhima is being rushed and Purusha Mrugam has actually caught hold of him. That's the last lap of the running race that they had. And Bhima's one leg is within his country, his boundary, and the other leg is outside. So the Purusha Mrugam has held him by hand. And there seated is Dharmaputra, who is actually pronouncing the justice. He says, well, you have only half won, so you can be half killed. So the Purusha Mrugam and Dharmaputra conversation is represented from the Dharasuram temple. A very unique representation of Purusha Mriga and Bhima along with Dharmaputra is seen here. This is again from the Chola temples, and I think this is, I'm sorry, I don't remember where exactly I took this picture from, but this is a Chola classic temple. So they have a Shiva temple represented instead of a Shiva Lingam. A very beautiful Ekatala Vimana Chola temple. So you can see the Shikara there, a single Tada. The Grivam is also represented. The Padavargam is represented. The roof part is there. The base part, the Adhishtanam, all of the architectural features are very clearly represented. Instead of showing a Shivalingam there, the Chola sculptors have detailed it out as a Shiva temple and have represented Purusha Mrugam waiting outside and performing a Shiva Puja. Here again, the body is completely that of a lion, but for the face alone. This is again from the Pranada of Subramania's shrine, the big temple at Tanjavur, where you have the representation of Purusha Mriga and Bhima running and being chased. This is from Nathamalai, the cave in Nathamalai has a representation of the same story too. This is where you see him on the passageways. This is from 16th century, Kanchipuram, and the Shivalingam in a Padmapeetam and a flower garland, all that is there. And the Purusha Mriga holds onto a bell. You can in fact see the tongue is there in the bell. And in one hand, he's having flowers that he is using for an archana on Shiva. A Madurai Nayaka period representation again. So on the column, I'm just showing one Nayaka period and one Chola period to point out to the differences. So here, the Purusha Mrugam is represented with a mace, and so is Bhima. So as Bhima is running, the Purusha Mrugam is trying to pounce and catch hold of him. All other features are the same. The last example is from a Southeast Asian example from the Khmer period. And the earliest representation of these kind of sphinxes are from Egypt. And there are also from the Greek tradition where a pair of wings are attached. Yeah, that's from the Greek tradition. A pair of wings to the lion's body, and the face is that of a human being. We are still not sure if it is an independent invention in Southeast Asian countries or a transition from the Hellenistic style. I personally feel such ideas have individually occurred in many different civilizations. For example, if you take rock art culture, we see similar techniques, similar figurines appearing in different zones of the world, different regions of the world, all from the same period. Yeah, so several styles. The headgear is either a kritam, a makutam, or a jatabandam. So that's the two choice. Those are two choices that you get to see. And so in most cases you see a beard with a mush, or some cases he's without a beard. The forehead, in this case of the Southeast Asian, the Khmer production, the forehead and other features, the other ornamentation features near his ears and the crown are very similar to the other sculptures that you see. I'm not as such concluding, but I would like to, I don't have a conclusion slide as such, but the Purusha Mriga is one area that needs more deeper study. while the references to Purusha Mruga and his features are seen starting from the Vedic scriptures, we don't get to see many references in the Thevaram verses as such. Not very popular references, but there are here and there. But he is revered in the Shaiva Agamas, and the Agamas prescribe specific places where he can be enshrined as a bas-relief sculpture, occasions where a huge Vahana can be made to bring out the deity on procession, or the most religious reference is to have a Deepa with a Purusha Mruga installed in it and worship. The Agamas also suggest that the Purusha Mruga be worshipped for progeny, monsoon, and for purity. The purity concept is because he does not think about anything but always performs Shiva Puja. There cannot be someone as pure as him because he's always filled with thoughts on Shiva. So as such, when you enter a temple, what would be the most easiest way to cleanse yourself than representing or than getting to meet Purusha Mruga as you enter? For a moment, you think about him and you think about his bhakti and how he was devoted to Shiva, and probably you just think about being very pure and worshipping Shiva, at least during your temple visit. The most strongest impact of Purusha Mruga, personally to me, is the development of a ritual pilgrimage, of a running ritual pilgrimage in Nagarkovil, Kanyakumari districts of Tamil Nadu, where very beautifully the traditional history from Mahabharata of Purusha Mruga and Bhima running and chasing has been adapted to a circuit of 12 Shiva temples, and people continuously do it till date. And it is a very, very popular prayer, and lakhs of people participate in it. And it is not an easy run. It's close to 100 kilometers that you'll have to cover in a day. So that's probably the strongest impact, according to me. Thank you for the opportunity. And I've just covered various aspects available in various literary sources and shown examples cutting across popular cultural, popular dynastic representation and popular artistic representations available, especially in South India. As I told you in the beginning, I have restricted this presentation to representation from popular schools of art in South India alone. Hope you enjoyed the session. Be happy to be connected with you. I have just pointed out my social media handles, and any doubts regarding this, I'm happy to answer them.